And welcome back, my friends, to ColeJakeTV. And my friends, do you ever find yourself, or maybe a loved one, feeling troubled? Perhaps that troubledness feeling swells up to actual angst and worry. Do you ever feel that? Do you ever remember the famous and precious words from our Lord Jesus? It came out of the 14th chapter of the Gospel of John. And he says, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me." That, I believe, my friends, is such a powerful, potent passage for you and I to keep and harness around our necks throughout the days ahead. As we've been adventuring through the Acts of the Apostles, we've witnessed all kinds of behaviors. Some very receptive, not so much. God works in the most mysterious of ways. Let's not forget that. When you've placed your faith in Jesus, when you have come to the throne of grace, when you have set your life aside, taken up your cross, and you have decided wholeheartedly, Lord, I'm following you. When you find yourself in that place, oftentimes I do believe you will want to lean on this passage, which tells you, don't be troubled. Don't let your hearts worry. Trust in God with all your heart, with all your mind, body, and soul. Trust in God. Don't worry. Be happy. And trust in the Lord Almighty that will see you through every obstacle, every challenge, whatever may come your way. Remember, don't be troubled. Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God, and He will see you through. As we open our Bibles, we are going to be picking up in chapter 24 of the Acts of the Apostles. We'll see if we can get through this chapter today. And what we are seeing is we are slowly making our way through the adventures of the apostles and the actions and the acts of what they've accomplished in spreading the good news of Jesus Christ, in spreading the gospel, in sharing the promises of salvation through Christ alone, and explaining and walking from town to town, traveling by boat, by foot, explaining to each and every person, whichever town they might come across, of the only true way of entering into salvation. That true way is Jesus Christ. And so if you're with us today, welcome to ColeJakeTV. And as we've opened up our Bibles, we are entering into chapter 24. Let's begin. 5 days later, Ananias, the high priest, arrived with some of the Jewish elders and the lawyer Tertullus to present their case against Paul to the governor. And when Paul was called in, Tertullus presented the charges against Paul in the following address to the governor. And this is what he says. "You have provided a long period of peace for us, Jews, and with foresight have enacted reforms for us. For all of this, Your Excellency, we are very grateful to you. But I don't want to bore you, so please give me your attention for only a moment. We have found this man to be a troublemaker." That's what they love to identify Paul. He spreads the good news of Jesus Christ, and they label him a troublemaker. They've been doing that from town to town to town. who is constantly stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the cult known as the Nazarenes. Furthermore, he was trying to desecrate the temple when we arrested him. I mean, that's a bold-faced lie. You can find out the truth of our accusations by examining him yourself. Then the other Jews chimed in, declaring that everything Tertullus said was true. The governor then motioned for Paul to speak. Paul said, "I know, sir, that you have been a judge of Jewish affairs for many years. So I gladly present my defense before you. You can quickly discover that I arrived in Jerusalem no more than 12 days ago to worship at the temple. My accusers never found me arguing with anyone in the temple, nor stirring up a riot in any synagogue or on the streets of the city. These men cannot prove the things they accuse me of doing." Verse 14. "But I admit that I follow the way," that's Jesus, "which they call a cult. I worship the God of our ancestors, and I firmly believe the Jewish law and everything written in the prophets. I have the same hope in God these men have, that he will raise both the righteous and the unrighteous. Because of this, I always try to maintain a clear conscience before God and all people. After several years away, I returned to Jerusalem with money, if you recall, to aid my people and to offer sacrifices to God." That's when Paul took up an offering to help the people that were poor. Verse 18, "My accusers saw me in the temple as I was completing a purification ceremony. There was no crowd around me and no rioting. But some Jews from the province of Asia were there, and they ought to be here to bring charges if they have anything against me. Ask these men here what crime the Jewish high council found me guilty of, except for the one time I shouted out, 'I am on trial before you today because I believe in the resurrection of the dead.'" Verse 22. "At that point, Felix, who was quite familiar with the way, adjourned the hearing and said, 'Wait until Lysias, the garrison commander, arrives, and then I will decide the case.' He ordered an officer to keep Paul in custody, but to give him some freedom and allow his friends to visit him and take care of his needs. A few days later, Felix came back with his wife, Drusilla, who was Jewish. Sending for Paul, they listened as he told them about faith in Jesus Christ. And as he reasoned with them about righteousness and self-control and the coming day of judgment, Felix became frightened. 'Go away for now,' he replied. 'And when it is more convenient, I'll call for you again.' He also hoped that Paul would bribe him, so he sent for him often and talked with him. After 2 years went by in this way. Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and because Felix wanted to gain favor with the Jewish people, he left Paul in prison. And this is at least 2 years that Paul has been in prison. We'll pick up in Acts chapter 25 tomorrow, my friends. I'm your messenger, GB. Thank you so much for joining us here at ColeJakeTV each and every weekday as we do a verse-by-verse, book-by-book Bible study. And we're reading out of the New Living Translation. We'll see you next time. Have a blessed day.